Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Nancy Drew, the second season episode entitled The Celestial Visitor. Now this was the backdoor pilot for the Tom Swift episode. Now when it comes to Tom Swift, I've actually never heard of him, so I didn't know nothing whatsoever about him. Like when it comes to say Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys, like I've never seen them on TV or a movie in the past. Like my first iterations of them have actually been the recent TV shows and stuff. Like I've heard about them and I knew about them and I knew they solved mysteries and stuff. So that's really the only thing I ever knew about them. I never saw none of the past movies or TV shows, none like that. So at least I knew something about them from hearing about them in the past. But when it comes to Tom Swift, and I hope I said Tom Swift the first time, not Tom Sawyer. When it comes to Tom Swift, I didn't even know who that was and stuff. So I had to look him up before the show even started because I didn't know anything about him. And so first I read the CW description of him, of how they interpret this character. So I knew going in how he was gonna be. They reimagined him as a black gay man. He's an inventor and a billionaire. So then I decided to go to Wikipedia and see what the original what the original Tom Swift character is supposed to be. I keep thinking Tom Sawyer for some reason. Anyways, but yeah, pretty much he's just he was created in the 1910s. He was a white kid. He was an inventor. He went on tons of adventures. They reimagined him in modern days in newer kids books when he's younger and stuff. And I believe he's created by the same person who created the Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys book series and novels. So as far as I can research, he has no real connection to Nancy Drew in the novels. So I figured, they wanted to create more stuff based off his work since Nancy Drew is a hit on the CW. And of course, they can't have the Hardy Boys crossover because that's a Hulu property now. And when it comes to Nancy Drew, she's on the CW, and I believe she's being streamed on Paramount Plus instead of Netflix, which is kind of weird. And so I watched this episode because, I am a fan of Nancy Drew, and I was really curious to see, this backdoor pilot to see if it's going to become a show or not. Because when it comes to backdoor pilots, the majority of them never make it to an episode full season order. Most of them just, they just get scrapped and that's that. And then they go into TV oblivion or whatever you call it. Now this rundown is gonna be somewhat of a rant because I found myself being frustrated and a little irritated in this episode, not with the Tom Swift character, but with Nick and what was written for him in this episode. I was just a little shocked and surprised, and I felt like it could have been handled a whole lot better, and it should have been handled more throughout the season. And I promise to God, I'm not part of the fandom menace. I swear, sometimes it might sound like I am, but I'm really not. I'm the complete opposite. First, let me just say the actor who plays Tom Swift, this dude is cool, and I really like his character. He's a super genius. You know what I'm saying? Now, I like smart characters, and I like when smart characters are handled right. But it's interesting because they didn't write him as the nerdy, dopey, geeky type person. They wrote him more in line of a split between Tony Stark and then Cisco from The Flash. It's okay, he has the personality traits of Tony Stark, but in a more swaggery kind of black kind of way, And as opposed to Cisco, he reminds me of Cisco because of the stuff he invents. he invents some like high tech, like super like type stuff, but it looks more along the line of something Cisco would make as opposed to Tony Stark, because his inventions are very high tech and like futuristic looking, which make, my bad, feeling a little sick, but it reminds, because in the books, from what I researched, like, since it was the 1910s, he invented stuff that looked kind of like futuristic too, but in like those like modern times of that day. So it's kind of like something you would see on Batman the animated series type stuff. All that high tech, like techno stuff, but back in like a 1940s type of vibe. Also, the actor who plays him, he looks just like Chadwick Boseman. Like, I kid you not. Like, he looks like the Black Panther himself. And I'm just like, man, like, I was getting some like weird like Black Panther-y vibes. And I was like, oh man, I miss Chadwick, because it sucks he can't be in the Marvel movies no more, and it sucks that he's not around no more. And I do agree with Marvel. They should not recast the character. Just come up with a brand new Black Panther, which they probably gonna come up with his sister Shuri. But hey, you know, T'Challa might have a child he doesn't know about, and Storm is supposed to get introduced into the MCU, so maybe they knew each other from the past, had a kid, and she didn't tell him, and it turned out to be him. I will accept that. Also, it was really great to hear like LeVar Burton's voice again. I keep forgetting what his voice sounds like. Cause it's been a while since I saw like Reading Rainbow or Star Trek Next Generation, and his voice is so much like light sounding because it's more deeper like on Next Generation and stuff. And so like it's just like really cool to hear him. It'd be cooler to see him, but hopefully he'll get that Jeopardy gig. I know what you're saying. Why did Nick piss me off so much in this episode? Well, one thing I am glad, because the stuff that did happen, it gave him some character development. And that's something I've been wanting for a long time with these characters. I want character development. However, I feel like this character development was more CW-ish than actual real character development. It didn't flow for me. Also, some stuff that happened in this episode didn't flow for me also. Like, there's one thing that really irritated me. So let's get on to this episode. And what irritated me about it is not going to be so much a review. Is this mostly going to be like just like a little rundown and like a little ranty type stuff. Now, there are a few parts in this episode I kind of missed because I forgot what I was doing something else, and it took my attention away from the show. I had to go like in another room, but I came back. So when I missed this episode, I probably missed at the most part like a minute at the most, but those minutes, that minute, explains some things kind of, but anyway. So it starts off with the Drew crew, which I still hate that name. And they're doing some kind of like seance ritual type thing, and George is the one conducting it, and she's doing it in like a different language, like an Asian language. So like they're doing that, and it's all this like cool like windy type stuff, and her chanting, and then next thing you know, there's like a knock on the door, and it's Tom Swift. And so I'm all like, did she conjure him up, or did he just randomly show up? And that's the part like I missed. I don't know if she conjured him or he just randomly showed up. But he showed up because he's looking for a meteorite that he wants to make, I think like into like a little rocket spaceship type thing and send it off into like space for like his dad or something like that. But if she didn't conjure him up, then he got there because he has like I said, like a lot of high tech stuff. So he was able to scan for it and saw that it was in their town. And so going into this, like I said before, I knew he was gay. First, let me get into why they changed the character. The creators said they changed it for a reason. I didn't read that reason. I just didn't like care. But it's cool that they wanted to have like a more diverse character. And it's like, because like, because this dude was written in the 1910, so everything was very white back then, like what I'm saying, and stuff. And so when they first changed him to black, and then they turned him gay, I'm thinking to myself, this is before I researched, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I mean, this is probably just the CW doing what they do, you know what I'm saying? Because like with the CW, they will diversify for the sake of not diversifying, but for like, hey, look what we did. Like, aren't we cool kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? And stuff. And lots of networks and TV shows and writers, they do stuff like that. But however, like it no longer becomes cool when you constantly do it. Like I'm not saying like every character on the show needs to be like white or anything like that, or every new character has to be like white or straight. But it's kind of like, you know, its specialness has worn off because they constantly like do it. And the Arrowverse is a prime example. Like pretty much every new character who gets introduced is like diverse in like some way, either by race or like LGBT community, or sometimes just both. And the CW does that a lot, like with Riverdale and stuff. And it's like it will be cooler, if it didn't happen every single time with every single character. And it would be cooler if it would have like more of a flow instead of it being like just crammed, like, you know what I'm saying? The CW is great for like actually giving people the opportunity to do something other than just like white straight like characters, or people, I should say, not characters, because I'm talking about like real people. And also, yeah, the characters too. Because it's like when you actually look into like like say like the Arrowverse, there's actually a lot of diverse and LGBT people both behind and in front of the camera. And a lot of people don't know that. And so, of course, when you have like writers and directors and creators who are that, they want to show themselves in like the show, and they do. But then sometimes they constantly like show it, like, you know what I'm saying? And then it's kind of like, well, what is your end game for this? Are you doing it to truly show like diversity, or are you doing it to be like, hey, look what we're doing, aren't we cool? And nobody else is doing this, and people are like paying attention to us. Because you have to remember how the CW came to be. It used to be UPN and the WB. And I've said this before, WB was mostly like white 20-something shows, and then UPN, at first they was like a white network, but then they discovered that they had more fans of like say Star Trek and black comedies. So like once they saw that they had a huge fan base for those type of genres, they pretty much got rid of everything else. They got rid of all the other like historical shows, that white comedies, and they primarily focus on just Star Trek and just like black comedies. And it was like a huge hit, and a lot of like black stars wanted to go to UPN, like Chris Rock and like stuff like that. Cause then it was kind of like, why go to BET when we can just go to UPN, and people can actually see us because you don't have to pay for cable. And then they merged, and then when they merged, the CW just turned. Well, at first it was like an actual blend of both stations, but then it quickly just became back to WB again with just white networks, and it took like a full decade for them to have like an all black like show again. And that was ridiculous. It's like, y'all used to be UPN and stuff, and so a lot of people have called them out on that, even some of their stars, which let's put a pin in that for later. And so my one problem with, I guess, what people want to call like woke culture, like, that word is now starting to get slanderized because of the fandom minutes and stuff. But it's kind of like, if you want to show that, then show it and have some meaning and some substance behind it. Just don't do it for like a marketing ploy. And sometimes that's what I feel like the CW does, is that they do it more for like a marketing type ploy. Like take Batwoman, for example. Like, okay, when that show first started, they had Ruby Rose as Batwoman. And then Ruby left at the end of the first season, which totally screwed things up. Now, I said all along what they should have done. either recast Ruby Rose with, I think her name is, I forgot her name. She's from Fear the Walking Dead. I want to call her Maggie Green, but I don't think that's her name. I think Maggie's the lady from The Walking Dead. But I forgot this actress' name because they look very similar. If they wasn't going to do that, then what they should redeem the villain of the show, Alice, because Alice is Kate's twin sister in the show, even though they look nothing alike. But I say redeem her and then make her the new Batwoman. Why? Because okay, Batwoman was integrated into the Arrowverse in a big way. When they had that crossover, she was like front and center. She's part of the Justice League now. She was a Paragon. Like, she's very like stuck in the Arrowverse like mythos, you know what I'm saying? So she's and it's just not Batwoman herself. It's Ruby Rose, Kate Kane's character that is integrated in there, Also, when it comes to the Batwoman show, the Batwoman show doesn't revolve around Batwoman herself. It revolves around Kate Kane. Everything revolves around Kate Kane. She is the cousin of Bruce Wayne, who is Batman. Batman has left. He feels terrible for not being able to save Alice, who he thought was dead, but turns out that, Beth, I should say. And Beth turned into Alice, turned into a villain. He has now left Gotham. She has taken up the mantle of the Bat. She has broken into the Batcave. She has redesigned all his stuff. Now the town has forgotten all about Batman, say screw him. Now they're all for Batwoman. All of the characters revolve around her. Her dad is the head of the new police department, like the Crows. Her not half sister, stepsister, what do you call it? She runs like this medical facility underground for people who necessarily can't get like the help benefits they need, and for like former criminals and stuff. What's his name? Lucius Fox. Him and her, they have a really good bond. They have like really nice banter that goes on between each other. And of course, the villain herself is her twin sister, and she is the main villain of the show. And then Alice, she brings in all these other villains into the show that she knows that just wreak havoc on Gotham and mess with her sister and stuff. So the whole show is integrated into Kate. So by not recasting her, that screwed up everything to where in season 2 they had to go back to basics and stuff with a new origin story and all this other stuff. And of course, they didn't want to recast all their characters and have new people that know this Ryan person. So instead, they kind of crammed these old characters into the new Batwoman storyline. Oh, also, Kate had like a lover, a former lover that she fell in love with back in the day, and then they broke up. And then, her and Batwoman starting to have a thing together. So that's integrated. Alfred's niece, I believe it is, she has feelings for Kate and everything. And it's like everybody's integrated into Kate. So then what they did is they created a brand new character who happens to be black. And her name is Ryan Router. And so it's kind of like, we get why they did it, because it's kind of like the whole Blackish Christmas episode, the Black Santa one, where it's like, he wanted to be Santa Claus when the white dude died. And this one lady who's Mexican, she's like, no, I want to be Santa Claus. And he's all like, we can't have a Mexican Santa. It has to go from white, black, Asian, then Mexican, and then probably Native American or something like that, he said. And of course, that's not the rule, but it's kind of like the rule in TV. It's like if you have a white main character and then you want to diversify it, one of the main things they do is turn that character black. Spider-Man, Miles Morales, now Batwoman, etc. That's just what they do in Hollywood now and stuff. And it's kind of like, so they made her character black on the show. But then they also did it because they was getting heat because of how they mishandle their black characters and their black stars. Like I told you before, it took like a whole decade just from having like an all black like series. And then like when they had Riverdale, they made not the Pussycat Dolls, Josie and the Pussycats, that band, they made them all black. And I'm like, cool, and then I'm just like, okay, well, they made them all black for a reason. They must gonna do something like really cool with them on the show. This is back when I used to watch it in season 1. And what did they do with them? Absolutely nothing. They didn't start doing stuff with them until like some of the black characters left and they started introducing like non-black characters. And that's when they started doing stuff with them. And then so it's kind of like, I thought for sure they would get like probably like their own spin-off or something, because how like interesting and unique is that to have Josie and the Pussycat Dolls be all Pussycat Doll, God. Okay, Josie and the Pussycats be like all black, you know what I'm saying? As opposed to what they were when they was created back in like the 70s or whatever year that was. And so eventually one of them did get a spin-off show, but she was spun off into like the show. Like it wasn't her show. It was actually Lucy Hale's show. And it's kind of like, really? Like you couldn't even spin off that character and have her go on her own journey? You had to like shoehorn her in on like another character that's never been shown on the show before. And so people started getting irritated by that. And then this one actress, I think she plays something Topaz on the show, and she called them out big time about how they treat like their black stars and stuff like that, and how like her character has no real substance and she just there to be like mostly just a background character and stuff. So then when it came time to make the black Batwoman show, there was rumors that she might be it. And so when they recast it, they're like, oh no, we're gonna go definitely for like a black like Batwoman and stuff like that. And they did it more so out of guilt than they did it for just like doing it and showing like real diversity, Now, many years ago, they created a black Batwoman and a Hispanic one, but they didn't do it just for the sake of like doing it. They did it for creative purposes, and they had 3 black, they had 3 Bat women that threw the scent off Batman, so he couldn't figure out which one it was and stuff. And it was a really good movie. I suggest checking it out. But like when the CW did it, they just merely did it just to be like, hey, like look at us, we're diverse and everything, but without giving it like a real like meaning, because it's like they now have this black Batwoman, but we still don't know very much about her, like at all. We know that her adoptive mother or foster mother was murdered and stuff like that, and so she's been in and out of the system, and stuff like that. But it's kind of like the person who she thinks killed her mom was Alice, but Alice didn't do anything. It was Alice's gang, and Alice was pissed at them because, like I said before, this show is still primarily focused on Kate. And so it's kind of like, what was the point in bringing in this new character if we don't know much about her? We don't know much about her backstory. They brought in her girlfriend who's trouble, but now she's left the show. And it's kind of like, now they even recast the character of Kate Kane finally. So it's kind of like, what was the point in doing that now? And they should have done that in the beginning. And so now it's kind of like this show, and then they're trying to like show like a love connection between Kate X and now this new character who's Batwoman. And it's just like, this show is still the Kate Kane show, and now they're trying to redeem Alice now. And it's kind of like they should have done that to begin with. So it's kind of like they threw in this character to be all like, haha, look what we done. Like, you should love us now and stuff. We introduced like a black Batwoman, but they don't do nothing with her, period. Like in the whole show, because it still revolves around the original Batwoman. And so it's like, what was the point in doing that? So now their little diversity stint, that's all it was just a stint. Like they didn't do it for the sake of real representation and giving like young like black girls a hero to look up to, like say Storm. When they created Storm from the X-Men, they wanted to show real, true, diversity. She was a strong leader. She was a warrior. She was a mutant. She was a hero. She fought for mutant rights and like the rights for all to like be treated equally and stuff. And she was created for the sole purpose of like wanting to make real change, not just like splashing something on a page and be like, okay, we have something here for you to like. Now give us ratings, you know? Also, the Arrowverse has been called out because like when they decided to race bend certain characters, say like what's her name, Iris from the Flash, of course the comic book fans were not happy about that because they're whining, oh, you're replacing us and blah 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 and stuff like that. And so, you know, and the actress got so much heat from that, and the network never tried to like defend her, or and the stars of the show never tried to like defend her until they got called out. Then they started defending her and stuff. And of course, because Iris is black, then both Kid Flash and Impulse have to be black too. And so, you know, by that time they were kind of like okay with it, but they still give the Iris character like heat just because of her race, and that's like totally messed up. And it's like I get why they wanted to do that. Back in them comic book days, you know, there wasn't that many black characters, and if they were stereotypes, you know. But fans just could not like help themselves from being like racist and stuff. And Tom Swift, he was race bent because, of course, you know, he was written back in the 1910s, and you know, but here's the thing, those older books have been considered racist because every time they have a black person, they depict them as like savages or like people, excuse me, or people who are not very well educated, or they just depict them in like the worst way possible, like they're like the villains. And then of course they have the white person coming in and saving the day. And so that's one major reason why they race bent Tom Swift's character. As for them turning him gay, well, that's just the CW being the CW. So back into the show. And so like when he showed up, I assumed he was gonna be hitting on Nick throughout the show, you know, because he's black, he's gay, and you know, he probably like vibes more like with his own people and stuff. Or I at least thought he might like hit on Ace, because I still think Ace is secretly gay and stuff. But when he does talk to Nick, I was very shocked to hear what I heard. At first, I couldn't quite hear what he was saying because he didn't want to talk that loud and hear all the other characters hear him. And he said something along the lines of, how did these white people wrangle you into, I think, doing something, probably like the seance or something like that. And Nick kind of like joked around back with him, like back and forth, and George overheard that. And then later on in the episode, he's talking to Nick again, and when Nick was on his tablet, and he mentioned Nick's like hairstyle, talking about how it's a little like messed up, and Nick's like, oh yeah, you know, I did it myself because I have to do it myself, you know, because like when I went to this one barbershop, they looked at my hair and said they don't know how to do that, because he went to like a white barbershop, and he said the only black barbershop is many miles away, so he just figured he'll just like do it himself. And so then George comes over there, and like she talks to him, and she's all like, well, what exactly is all this? Like, why are you acting differently when you're around him? Is it because like he's black? And she's all like, do you act differently when you're around black people? And he's all like, well, yeah. And that kind of like pissed off, because she's all like, man, I really don't even know who you are. And so let's put a pin in that later. And so, you know, he tells like the Drew crew like why he's here and stuff like that. So they help him on his little mission and stuff. And when he tracks like I think like I said, I skipped the whole lot part of this episode because like I was doing something else. And also I couldn't stop thinking about the whole Nick thing. And then so like they go looking for this like meteorite type thing, and they go someplace, and they're walking around like this spooky type like castle type thing, because you know there's Scooby-Doo now. And so I've noticed that this character, he kept hanging around, well, Tom, he kept hanging around Nancy a lot. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, because, you know, she's like the main character of the show. But I would have thought that he would have hung out at least with Bess a little bit more, because, you know, she's like a lesbian or a bisexual and stuff. And, you know, a lot of people in the LGBT community like to hang out with themselves, you know. But he hung out with Nancy a lot, and it was weird. I was getting like a vibe off both of them, because it's kind of like, okay, this one doesn't make sense. Okay, so like the actor who plays him, I believe he might be bisexual. I think I read that somewhere, but he's playing like a gay character, and so I assume, he would be more into like the guys on the show. But when every time he kept talking to Nancy, it was almost like he was flirting with her and stuff, and she was kind of like digging it, and she was kind of like flirting, smiling back too, and I'm just like, that's kind of weird, because isn't he supposed to be like gay? So why is he vibing big time like with her? you know and so like they're talking, they're constantly hanging out, and then it's like, um yeah, it's just like, it's weird. It just, I kept getting like a flirtatious like vibe between those two, and it's just like it was written weird and stuff. And then there's like, and the thing about him, like I said before, like he's really cool. Like he's somewhat blunt. He's a little sassy. He's sarcastic. He tells people how it is, even if it hurts their feelings, especially with how they dress. Like he makes fun of like her like prom dress type thing. I'm just like, oh man, it's so cold and stuff. And he literally does it to her face, and she feels like sorry about it. And then at the end of the episode, like, he buys her a new dress that he says more presentable and stuff. And so when he's all like, okay, we have to go here because the clues tell us to go here, she's like, okay, you need to probably like dress like warmly or something like that. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I have like a different outfit for like every occasion. So he literally like changes outfits like 5 to 10 times a day. And so one time in the episode, he takes off his shirt and he starts like undressing in front of her and changes up, and then he just wears like a jacket, like doesn't even put like a shirt underneath it, and she's like checking out like his muscles and like all this other stuff. I'm just like, Nancy, aren't you kind of with that other dude? And Tom, aren't you like not into girls? But he's like showing off, showing like what he got, just to like kind of make her kind of like jealous and want him and stuff, knowing that she can't have him. So Ace doesn't really do much in this episode. He hangs out with his new girlfriend for all of like a minute. So I was like, God, what is the point in that? And then so like, when Nancy and Tom are like investigating, these statues come alive and they turn into like these like ghost, like monster-y type protector type things. And he's freaking out because he doesn't believe in the supernatural. He believes in the technological. And so she's all like, you can't fight ghosts with like technology or something like that. I forget exactly what she says. So it's like this cool montage. He's like, oh yeah, you want that. So then he comes in with like a new invention, trying to like destroy the ghost, and the ghost keeps like knocking him like several feet away into the wall and stuff. It's like a really cool like moment. But then when they did that, I noticed something. They had rap music playing in the background, and I'm just like, hey, there's no rap music in Nancy Drew. And it just felt like so like out of place and everything, because I'm just like, when did they start playing rap music? And it's just, I'm like, oh, they only did that because of his character, because his character has like a lot of swagger, so that makes sense. But it would make more sense in his own spin-off show, because it's kind of like, I hate when they do that, when they will add like, say, like rap music for whenever there's like a black character, because they think rap music defines black people, but music does not define like one race. And it's kind of like, if the show or movie has that vibe, then it makes sense, It makes sense for like Black Lightning because they have that vibe on the show. It made sense for Into the Spider-Verse because Miles Morales and his uncle and all of them are kind of like more like, like ghetto-ish and stuff like that. So it makes sense to hear like rap music and like that movie and stuff. And it works, because it sets the tone for that type of like atmosphere that the show builds up. One show it does not work for was The Defenders. Like when they did that in The Defenders, they only did that because of the Luke Cage character. But it just didn't flow. Like it just seemed so weird seeing like Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Jessica like fight to like rap music, and it wasn't even like good rap music, Now it made sense for Static Shock, 'cause that was like a show that was like very much in like urban and like ghetto and like in the hood and stuff like that. So it made sense for that. But what it didn't make sense for is when they had him cross over into Batman Beyond and in Batman the Animated or the New Adventures of Batman, and they had rap music playing in the Batman Beyond and the New Adventures of Batman. It just didn't like it didn't flow, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just didn't fit, which is why they didn't do it for that one Justice League Unlimited episode. They just kept that out because they realized it just didn't flow that very well, you know? And it just didn't flow well for Nancy Drew's show. Because I remember years ago, back when I watched Desperate Housewives, the very first episode, the famous Gabby episode where she's cutting the grass in her evening gown, and you hear like Mexican music play. Now back then I didn't think nothing of it. I didn't think that was like a bad thing at all, and it was like nice music and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that probably makes sense because she's Mexican. But then when I was listening to the audio commentary, the creator of the show said that both Eva Longoria and the guy who plays Carlos, her husband, were like furious because they felt like, you know, there was no point in adding that music only because they're Mexican characters. That music was only played for them and them only, and you don't hear it throughout the rest of the show because the rest of the show has like a different type of music and stuff. And so they just felt like it was so out of place, and it was kind of like just messed up that they would do that. And so after that, I'm like, oh, okay, I get what they're saying now, you know? Like, music does not defy a race. You know, if you're gonna have music, it needs to be the type of music that's set for that entire type, like, show. You know what I'm saying? And because it's kind of like they never do that with Nick. Whenever he shows up, they don't play, like, hip hop or like R&B music. When they have George, you never hear them play like, you know, like K-pop or J-pop or any type of like traditional like Asian type music. When you see the white characters on the show, you don't hear like pop, rock, or like country music, you know? So it just felt like really out of place when they did that. Another thing that felt really out of place was like how nobody was shocked and amazed by his technology. Like when I said this was some high tech, like Tony Stark, Cisco type stuff, it was like high tech. And they're just like all nonchalant, like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. And I'm just like, they're not used to like seeing that type of stuff. You don't see that in this type of show. This is a supernatural paranormal type show, you know? Now he was freaked out when he saw like the statues come alive. Like that made sense. Like, you know what I'm saying? But for them, just to be all like, oh, high tech, whatever. But they don't have stuff like that on this show. So they should have had some kind of like reaction to it. So let's unpin something when it comes back to Nick, because now him and George are on a date because she wants to kind of get to know him a little bit more better. And this is what's very shocking about his character. When the whole part where he says, like, you know, he talks differently when he's around black people and stuff like that. When I heard that, I first thought to myself, that's kind of weird. Like, I'm black, and when I talk to people, I talk to everybody the same exact way. I talk like anybody, you know, I don't change like my tone or nothing like that. And other black people, like, you know, I've seen and hung around, they don't change who they are when they're around people. They're still exactly like how they are, you know, and like whatever, you know. If it's like, say, like more of a ghetto type person, they're gonna be ghetto around black people and white people and stuff. And it's just kind of weird because I'm not really used to seeing that. Now, I'm pretty sure there are some people in the world that are like that. I'm pretty sure, like, say, work, you know, say you have a person who's more urban or say like ghetto and use like a lot of slang and stuff and dress and act a certain way. Say they have a job as an accountant. Well, of course, they're not going to act and dress the way they do at home at their job. They're going to change for like whatever type of job that is. And, you know, and that makes sense and stuff. And I know people do talk differently when they're at home and stuff, but it's kind of like, I just don't like get that, you know. But, you know, I can understand where he's coming from in a learning aspect of saying like people shouldn't have to change the way they talk, you know, when they're around certain races. But what doesn't make more sense about it is like we have seen him. Now, he said one reason why that is because there aren't that many black people in his town. And that makes sense because on this show, you don't see too many people of color. All you see really are white people. And they pop in like a couple of like people of color here and there a lot more now in the second season than they did the first. And so it's kind of like, so I get that. But we have rarely seen him hang around like other black people. We saw him hang around a black guy, I think a couple episodes ago, and then he hung out with his mom. And what's so weird is like, okay, he acted exactly the same way he always does when he was talking to those black people. So I don't get where he's coming from. He doesn't change his demeanor when he's around like black people. He's still the same person he is when he talks to white people. So I don't understand where his character is coming from and why that necessarily was written for him. Then he started doing like the whole 90s black versus white thing. I'm just like, dude, that's so like 90s and that's so out of place on this show. Like there's never been an issue about like race, because like what happened was he's upset at George because she doesn't post no pictures of him on like her Facebook and stuff or social media, and there's no pictures of them like hanging out together. And he said he does, and she doesn't display him, and and she said she didn't think he was all that like social media savvy and stuff, so he wouldn't like care. And so he's all like, well, why don't you display me like and show me like, no, is it because like I'm black? I'm just like, where did this come from? Like, when has this ever been like an issue for him? Like, George has dated him since first season and she has hung out with him in public and she doesn't care who sees them together. Not to mention she's Asian, so why would she care anyway? Because you would think more of a white person caring than an Asian person. But then again, I have heard in the Asian community a lot of them really don't like black people that much and stuff. But still, this is a fictional TV show, and so it's like, where did this come from? And it's kind of like he didn't feel this way with Nancy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, with Nancy, he was her secret boyfriend of all things, so he wasn't really displayed left and right, you know what I'm saying? But then he gets upset at George about this, and then if he knew anything about George, which he probably doesn't, because he got with her extremely quick after he dumped Nancy, is that she has commitment issues. She has relationship issues, especially with the whole Ryan thing, He was married, he had an affair. She fell in love with the dude as a teenager. He probably made her think that she was the only one special to him and that he was going to leave his wife for her, and never did. And so she has like relationship commitment issues. That's why she kept rejecting him when he kept like trying to like get with her and stuff. And he got with her extremely fast as soon as he like dumped Nancy and stuff. And not to mention, if she doesn't want to display him, it's probably because back in season 1, the townspeople didn't like him so much, because he had killed that person and stuff. And so I just don't get where he's coming from at all. Because it's like he tells her, this one, I don't know what singer or band it was, but he mentioned like, that this one singer, I don't like this person. She's like, but you listen to him all the time. He's like, no, you listen to him all the time. I'm just here listening with you and stuff. And so it's kind of like the singer, I'm pretty sure the singer's white. So it's kind of like, so what they're trying to say, like George is Asian, but all she does is listen like to white music and that defines her or something like that. And so then he tells her, that show Friends, I've never seen it. And I'm just like, oh God, they went the Friends route. Like, okay, a little history here. Friends was a TV show that was primarily white cast. Some of them were Jewish and one's Italian. And then the show ran for like 10 years, and in all its 10-year run, there was only one black person who had like a real story arc on the show. And there was another black actress who just guest starred in one episode. And that one black actress who was primarily on the show, she was only there for one season. And a lot of people have called them out on that because it's kind of like, this is New York. New York is very diverse. You just don't see a bunch of white people. And that's what Friends was, And the history of Friends was this. There was a show called Living Single, which was a great comedy show, right? And so like it aired on Fox. They pitched it for NBC, but NBC said, the president of NBC, he was all like, I don't think our white audience is going to vibe well with like an all black cast, And so they went to Fox because, a lot of NBC shows back in the 90s and even still today are very primarily white because that's the demographic that watches their shows. And it's just America. So anyway, so they went to Fox and it turned out to be like a big hit. and people of all races watched it, and so they proved them wrong. And so the president of NBC was like, crap, now I passed up on this show and it's getting like all these great ratings. So he created his own show, Friends. And then Friends dominated a lot longer than Living Single did. And they even put the shows against each other on the same night and the same time. And Friends end up winning. And then, of course, many years later, How I Met Your Mother was a ripoff of Friends. But the whole premise of Friends was literally a ripoff of Living Single. Six single people living together in an apartment. The two guys living across the street, not across the street, but across the apartment. And, shenanigans here and there, and them dating and them fall in love with each other, stuff like that. So they ripped the crap out of that show. The long running gag is like black people don't watch Friends. One, yes they do. Two, I know I did. And three, white people do watch black shows and black comedy. Lots of people watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. They probably watch Martin too, maybe. Martin is probably a little too black for them. But they do watch black shows and black comedies and stuff. So I get tired of hearing this running gag of black people don't watch Friends. And so just like with George, she was confused by Nick's behavior too, as I was. I'm just like, where is all this crap coming from? And he told her, you don't know what it's like being a black guy living in a predominantly white town and stuff. Okay, the reason why it's predominantly white on that show is because one, it's the CW. Two, it's Canada. You know what I'm saying? Okay, if you think Americans are racist, wait till you go to Canada. Don't think they're all innocent, okay? Their white people hate black people just as much as Americans. And cause I remember I used to talk to this woman on the internet back when I was in college, and she lives in Canada. And she said it's getting bad over there. She said the level of racism between whites and blacks is what was similar to America back in like the 80s and like the 90s and stuff. And then not to mention what white people or white Canadians did to the indigenous people back in like the old days. Like, oh my God, like I could not believe that. It's like, cause I saw that on and with the E season 3, and I'm thinking, was this real? So I researched it. It is beyond real. So yeah, they're not a little sweet and innocent as people think they are and stuff. And so when it comes to their shows, I've noticed when it comes to like Canadian shows that I've seen, you don't see too many black people. And if you do, they're like biracial. They're like black and white, and they're very light skinned and stuff. And so, Nick was telling her, you don't know what it's like being a black person living in a predominantly like white town. And he said, like, there's this one customer. He didn't say the race of that customer, but it was a non-black person. He said the customer comes in, he's listening to music, and he says the N-word as he sings the music, kind of like Gina Rodriguez. And so he's all like, he just like lets the dude like sing it without telling him, hey man, don't say that word and stuff. And then he said he doesn't want to hear that guy ask him, well, why you get to say it and I don't. And he said he doesn't even feel like explaining to him, because he said he shouldn't have to explain it to him. One, on the N word, okay, nobody should use that word, period. In my opinion, that word needs to be retired. All it does is causes chaos and more confusion, because people do wonder, why are blacks only allowed to use it and they can't? And black people say, well, it's their word. Okay, first of all, words are universal. No one person or race has ownership to a word unless they copyrighted it. And last time I checked, black people did not copyright the N-word and stuff. And so technically everybody should be allowed to use it since it's universal, but nobody should use it because it is a slur. It's a terrible word that was made to oppress and keep black people down. One reason why I don't use it, because I'm thinking to myself, my ancestors wish they could be where I'm at right now, free, plain simple as that. They had their heads cracked open and like cotton fields being called that word. So I don't understand why my race is so like hung on like using that word and stuff. because when they do, they say they use it to deflect, like, so other races won't hurt them using it. But when they hear another race use it, then they get pissed. So that don't make no sense. So therefore, their logic is flawed. And so I get they want to have like black awareness, show it because of what's been happening last year and this year with all like the black shootings and stuff. But it's kind of like they doing it in a CW type way where they cram it all into like one episode, and then it just comes out of the blue when it doesn't happen throughout the series. Now this has been an issue in two other episodes when Nick's mom showed up, and then the last episode where Nancy was trying to solve the murder for this black lady, because the cop slammed her head up against like the door or something like that, or a wall, and she bled internally, and the cop didn't do nothing to help her, and neither did the other cop. And so they just faked it and said, oh, she just died on her own. And then Nick made a speech saying, like, this always happens to like us black people, and it always gets covered up. And it's true. But then, and it's kind of like that was a nice teaching moment, but it just came out of nowhere. If they really wanted to like emphasize on it, in my opinion, don't have it in like one little episode like Black History Month. Do it periodically throughout the entire series, you know what I'm saying? And show that awareness. Because Nick brought up in this episode, he has to keep everything bottled up inside because he doesn't want to be portrayed as the angry black man, which I've never heard that for. I heard the angry black woman, but that's only because, okay, lately a lot of people have been saying that they don't want to like pop off the people and start showing their real anger and frustration because people perceive them as a stereotypical, loud, angry black person. And the only reason why that is because there are a lot of angry, loud black people, like the really extreme, like ghetto ones and stuff. See, if they didn't act that way to make the entire black race look like a stereotype, then people wouldn't think that. And then people could show their frustration when they are angry, but they have to keep it bottled inside and stuff. And so if they were going to have that teaching moment, they should have explained that. And so now I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's see where this goes. If Nick truly says what he says to be true and how he feels, then in next week episode and in all of season 3, we only got 2 episodes left in the season, and in all of season 3, we should see Nick talk and act differently. We should see him start listening to more rap music. We start seeing him using more slang. We should see him talking to everybody the way he talks to like black people off camera. If he does not do that, then this entire speech was kind of pointless and just crammed in people's throat. And that's what people are going to have a problem with. They're going to say, well, this is supposed to be a teaching moment. Why didn't you truly like teach me instead of like trying to preach to me, And that is my problem with like the CW. They don't let nothing flow naturally. Everything has to be crammed and checked off their list. And if you have to check something off, that's not real representation or having no real substance behind it. And I just found myself irritated with this entire episode when it came to like Nick, especially when he accused George of like not wanting to present him because like, he's black and crap. And it's like her family has seen him, so she doesn't have a problem with that. She just has problems with like other stuff. And he's never pointed that out to her. So how is she really supposed to know that that's bothering him, It was just like an out of blue like experience with this show. Similar to like the Falcon and Winter Soldier. It's like when, they kept bringing up the whole black versus white thing with Sam. And it's kind of like the MCU has never shown prejudice towards black people in none of their movies. So where is this coming from? Like even in the first season of Agent Carter that was set back in the 50s or 60s, that still was never shown. They shown that black people got along with white people and they had their own businesses. So in that Marvel universe, it wasn't like our real world until the second season of Agent Carter, and they did show it. And then it's kind of like, okay, well that they are trying to like be like real times, but with the movies and Sam, you've never seen him ever been treated differently, And then in the show, there was a scene where the cops a bunch of white cops were like looking to arrest Bucky because he violated his parole. So they went to an all black like neighborhood, and after Sam was getting talked to by that one dude about how he was a super soldier and how his country betrayed him, and because he was black and stuff, you see the cops walk up to Sam and Bucky, and they ask Bucky straight up, "Is this man bothering you, sir?" And I'm thinking to myself, okay, one, the cops know who they're here to arrest. They're here to arrest Bucky. They know what he looks like. So therefore, why are they gonna ask if Sam is bothering him? Like, you know what I'm saying? And that was like a 1950s type moment that they wanted to address. But it's like, dude, this is 2021. And it's like, it's not the 1950s. Like a cop, if they're gonna harass you, they will harass you in a different way than the 1950s kind of way. They'll just like pull you over for the sake of pulling you over just because you're black, And if they wanted to show that, then they should have shown that. And so then, the Drew crews, they're back in that little spooky cave, not cave, but that castle thing, and they're tripping an alarm. And so, like, towards the end of the episode, they all saying goodbye. He gives her a new dress. And he starts talking about his dad and how his dad's like a homophobe and everything. And it's kind of like, he's all like, and so then he's all like, you know what I should do? I should just take a picture of me kissing a man and put it on social media so my dad can just won't have to like deny it no more. I guess his dad denies that he's like gay, and so he's all like, "Hey man, so you want to like kiss and everything?" He tells that to Nick, and Nick's all like, "Sure." I'm just thinking to myself, okay, we're getting CW-ish over here again. So it's kind of like he doesn't hit on Nick throughout the whole episode, like none whatsoever. If anything, he hits more on like Nancy, all right, because he flirts more with her. Then out of the blue, he wants to just post a picture of him kissing a guy so he can like upset his dad and his dad won't have to deny it no more. And he randomly picks Nick because Nick is the black dude. And so Nick's all like, sure, let's do this. And I'm just thinking to myself, when has Nick ever like ever want to like kiss a dude? When? Like never. And it's just like that's never been Nick. Nick is like straight. Nick is like a dudes, you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't do that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of like, where did this come from? Like it just came out of the blue and like all nonchalant. And he's like totally okay with it. And I'm just like, is that supposed to like represent something? Is that supposed to like be like a victory or something like that? Like it's not. It's literally just doing that to be like, hey, look what we did and everything. We're doing stuff that other TV shows aren't doing, and so people can talk about us and stuff. And that's exactly what has happened on the internet. People are like, oh, Nick and Tom kissed, and like all the fans, they're like loving that and stuff. That's on Twitter, and it's just like it's just so random and like out of the blue. Nick is not like that. You've never seen Nick even close to being like that, and stuff. And it's just completely. That'll be like at best, be like, hey, Nancy, want to kiss a little bit? Nancy be like, sure, why not? And it's like that just would never happen, And not only would it not happen, you don't really see that in real life. How often do you see like a macho, like guy type dude? Be like, sure, dude, I'll kiss you, just for the fun of it. You know what I'm saying? And it was just like, it was just literally just like, it was a check mark. It was crammed and it was checked off a list because it's the CW. You know what I'm saying? It did not happen naturally. I would have been more okay with it if we would have seen Tom constantly hit on Nick throughout the entire episode. Then that would make sense. And then Nick would probably be like, I normally don't do this, but I'm like, sure, whatever. I'll just if it makes you happy. Like he broke him down type thing. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that would have made a whole lot more sense. didn't just like nonchalantly like happen. And it happened so casually that it was just like it just didn't make no sense. Cause like it's just like it would be like the opposite of like say like um I don't know, like say a straight woman wanted to no, okay, I better one. It would be like if a straight man be like telling like a lesbian like, hey, want to kiss so I can like piss off my family or whatever. She would say no. You know what I'm saying? And not to mention, this is a total double standard because, like, I'm surprised this happened in the way that it did, especially in the Me Too era. Because if it was the reverse, if it was a straight man asking a straight woman, hey, can we kiss this so I can put it on my social media account? First of all, pretty much every female watching that show would be like outraged, and every male who is for the Me Too movement, like I am, will be on the whole Times Up thing, will be like totally upset because it will be shown as sexist. So why is it okay for the Tom character who's gay to ask like a straight person that, but it's not okay for the straight man to ask a straight woman that? It's like a double standard. And I'm surprised people aren't mad about that online because normally when that does happen, they get pissed and say it's like sexist and everything. And because it does happen, like like even older shows, like they like people are so mad that they go online bringing up older shows saying like this happened on this show and this person's such a pervert, and then it's kind of like so they bring up all this old stuff and wanting this to get canceled, but then it's like when it happens to like say like and they don't want to go against like the LGBT community because then they'll be like, oh well, you're just a homophobe if you don't like that, you know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like I don't like double standards at all, like at all. You know what I'm saying? I'm not like against the LGBT community at all, because there are tons of characters that are totally cool, and I'm all for diversity, and I'm all for like people just being who they are. Whatever makes them happy, I'm all for. Now, if you're like a criminal and you're doing like a lot of bad stuff, I ain't for you, and I don't care what you are. But as long as you're like vibing like in a good kind of way, then I'm totally cool with you. And so it's kind of like I don't get why they just randomly did that at the end of the episode and stuff. It just made no sense. So as for like a backdoor pilot, I think this will get picked up probably, but most backdoor pilots don't. Um, I don't know what the vibe of the show is going to technically be like. I don't know if they're going to have him going on all these like wacky adventures like they do in the books, or if he's just going to like fight paranormal type stuff like they did in Nancy Drew, because that's what they had him do in this episode. So it's kind of like I am kind of curious what they're going to do with all his technology and what kind of like adventures they are going to go on. So I don't really know. Plus, I'm not really into sci-fi. Like the only sci-fi I like is Star Trek. I like some of the Star Wars stuff, especially the Mandalorian. I just never been a sci-fi type guy. So I probably won't watch this show, but I probably will if the adventures are like really cool. You know what I'm saying? And I do love tech. So, but I am kind of curious to know that if this series does get picked up, like what's it gonna be about? Like, like is he gonna be like traveling through time? Is he gonna be going out in outer space? Is he gonna be going like fighting dinosaurs? Is he gonna be going underwater to like do this type of adventure? Cause that's kind of like what happened in the older books and even in the newer books. So it's kind of like how far are they gonna deviate from that? Alrighty, well I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.